Canadians are honoring the service and sacrifice today of veterans and members of our armed forces. Remembrance Day ceremonies are being held in cities, towns, and villages in every province and territory. The main ceremony has just concluded at the National War Memorial in Ottawa. We want to share some of the sights and sounds from there. We are joined now by our chief correspondent, Adrian Arsenault, who led our coverage of the national ceremony in Ottawa today. So, Adrian, it was a moving day, a special day in Ottawa, just like it is each and every year. I'm hoping that you can take us through some of the highlights, though, and some of what stood out to you as you watched the commemoration unfold.
Oh, hi, Hillary. Absolutely. It's special every year, and yet it's somehow different every year, even though the ceremony itself is almost precisely the same. There's always a different sort of character to the day, and I think, you know, any recollections have to begin with the veterans. I mean, we are talking about the 80th anniversary of the end of the Second World War, and it's cold out here, and who should be out here all wrapped up but raring to go, but several veterans, 103, Ed Stafford is 104, he was in Toronto, Ernie Friesen is out here, he is also over 100, and in at least one case, what struck me about one of the vets, Ernie Friesen, is that this is the first time he's been to the ceremony, and you hear him talk, and he sounds like a little kid again, and you ask, you know, Ashley asked him who he's thinking of, and they're all thinking of their buddies, they're all thinking of who they were as teenagers, as young men. You know, we see them as old men now, and they just talk about who they were as young people, and it's that continuity and those stories that resonate every year, and also the fact, Hillary, that we keep learning more and more. I mean, a few years ago we started talking more vigorously about the women who served, the code breakers, the likes of Elsa Lassard, who's no longer here. We're talking more, and not enough, but a bit more about the Indigenous veterans and the reality that some of the hardest days they had were not necessarily just those days in war, but when they came home and realized they weren't perceived as equal anymore, that they were perceived as more equal on the battlefield, but then they couldn't get served in bars or taverns back here at home. So I think what sticks with me on this day is how much work there is to do, how much of an act remembrance is, what it asks of us, and also how determined people are to give it.
How determined they are to give it. And like you're saying, despite the fact that it's a cold, wintry day in Ottawa. We can see the snow there behind you on the National War Memorial. I saw it a few moments ago on the Peace Tower as well in Ottawa. Did that impact today's ceremony at all?
You know, in some ways there are things you didn't see because of it. The CF-18s, the Hornets, they couldn't do the flyover. We did see one Black Hawk helicopter. That was an RCMP Black Hawk helicopter. It sort of represents the protection of the border currently. So it's affected what you don't see. There's this lovely thing at the Canadian War Museum there is a headstone of the tomb of the unknown soldier that is positioned in such a way that at the 11th hour and the 11th day of the 11th month, there is a beam of light that will illuminate that headstone. Well, the sun waited until after 11 o'clock to emerge, but still there was a little bit more light. So yes, it affected it because of what you didn't see, but the streets were still pretty thick here. If you saw people laying down their poppies at the end, that went on for a good 45 minutes after the end of the service. No one was going anywhere. And again, it's the very least we can do is to physically show up for people who have given everything for the protection of this country we love.
And always so special then, of course, to see both the old but then the young as well, who, like you say, do continue to show up at the least that we can all do, like you're saying there, Adrian. One of this year's special guests, as always, would be this year's National Silver Cross Mother. This year, it is Nancy Payne from Ontario. She laid a wreath today in honor of all Canadian mothers who have lost sons and daughters to war as well. We've seen bits of your moving interview with her. Can you tell us a little bit more about her?
Oh, Nancy's fantastic. Nancy welcomes you into her home with hugs and offers of cups of tea, and there are pictures everywhere of her sons, Randy and Chris. It was Corporal Randy Payne, who she was laying a wreath for in particular today as a National Silver Cross Mother. She was nervous about being here, so having a little sense of her, I was nervous for her, but she said that she knew that Randy would be saying, "Come on, Mom. You got to do it. You can do it." And she knew that was sort of jet fuel for her to be there today. She did a fantastic job. This is a big ask to be the National Silver Cross Mother, because it's not simply what we see is the laying of the wreath, but what we don't see is that they spend a year connecting and dealing with other families and working with them and giving speeches. That is a lot. And, she lost her son in 2006, so she has lived alongside that loss and alongside that grief for a long time. And so having these conversations again, you see it puts a smile on her face, because she talks about how cheeky Randy was, what a charming man he was, how much fun he was, but also it just, that middle of the night phone call that must be the worst moment in a parent's life ever. It gets relived again. So it takes a lot of strength to do this. She did it with grace, as all these Silver Cross mothers are. They are an incredible group of people who are in a club they don't want to be in.
And of course, we're all grateful, not just to her, Adrian, but to her son as well, who, like you were just sharing, made the ultimate sacrifice nearly 20 years ago. Okay, Adrian, good to speak with you. We do appreciate all of this, all of the coverage. Thank you. That was CBC News Chief Correspondent Adrian Arsenault in Ottawa. Well, Prime Minister Mark Carney has released a message on this Remembrance Day. It reads in part, quote, "Today we honor the service of the brave women and men who answered the call, those who sacrificed years away from loved ones, those who returned from combat forever changed, those who never came home. In an increasingly dangerous and divided world, remembrance is also vigilance. Our sovereignty and our security and those of our allies are not guaranteed. The women and men of the Canadian Armed Forces protect them every day. Today, we pause to remember those acts of heroic service. We remember that our rights, our freedoms, our way of life were fought for and were won by Canadians who answered the call, lest we forget."